How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to car news, the second installment, so for February this year. As you know, if you've watched the previous video, I'm doing a once monthly video on all of the news that has taken place in relation to the automotive sector in that month. Just to give you a refresher on how that works, I give you 3 to 5 stories that I think are interesting, one big story that I think is super interesting that I'll go into detail on, and then I go through a bunch of announcements, which there are a lot this month in the run up to Geneva. And speaking of Geneva, topic of the week this week, which car are you most excited for being released at Geneva this year? Could be anything. Mine will show very shortly in this video, but we'll get into that. As with the last one, it's your feedback that will help this series to grow. I need as much help as possible because I have no idea what the best way to do the series is. Also, I've got an announcement coming at the end of the video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. As always, remember to like, comment and subscribe for more weekly car content, but without further ado, let's get into the video. And the first story this month follows on from one I mentioned last month, which is that the UK had a significantly poor 2018. It was sort of 9% down year on year in terms of investment and production and that kind of stuff, which is just awful. I mentioned in that video I didn't think that 2019 was going to be a good year for the UK either in terms of production and in terms of investment and in just generally for the automotive sector given Brexit and all the struggles that we're having. And January has basically proven me right so far. There was a decline in production of 18.2% in the 1 month. Remember, it was 9% for the entire of last year. It was 18.2% decline in January, which is insane for car production. The reasons why are basically there is a fall in demand from both China and Europe for cars that are built in the UK, which is not ideal. And it comes in the wake of some other announcements I think are also newsworthy stories related to this. So the first one being that Honda is planning to close its factory in Swindon in 2021. Currently it's producing 150,000 cars a year, which is way below its potential of 250,000 cars a year, which is basically expected out of that factory. If the Swindon factory does close in 2021, which it has announced that it will, we'll lose 3,500 jobs in just that one factory alone, which is incredible. Honda said the reason for this was an unprecedented change in the global automotive industry. By that I'm assuming they're talking about electric vehicles as well as kind of the materials that are used for those and where they come from. The UK has always been quite a legacy manufacturer of cars in terms of we've been doing it for so many years and we have the infrastructure to build cars super easily, but that doesn't mean that we're necessarily at the forefront of building electric vehicles, doesn't mean we're at the forefront of creating autonomous driving vehicles and the likes. So for Honda it makes sense to kind of move to somewhere where they think that they can produce that better, I guess. And I think it would be silly to suggest that Brexit had absolutely nothing to do with this. It probably did. They're looking at the UK as a general place to invest their time, money and production into, and if they don't see it as a good prospect, they just simply won't continue to work here. It's as simple as that. And to kind of prove that point, Ford have literally just suggested that they're happy to move all of their UK production into a completely different country somewhere else in Europe to protect their European business. They consider the UK to be quite a volatile place right now. They're not sure about whether or not they continue to produce their cars here, and they're considering options to move their production elsewhere, which would mean another further loss in jobs, as well as another hefty hit to the UK government, which was originally suggesting that the UK would remain a really strong manufacturer of cars. If they all disappear, then there's no cars to be manufactured here, basically. Moving on to something a little bit less depressing. In the last video I mentioned the fact that VW are going to be sharing their MEB platform with other manufacturers. And it seems that there might be a little bit of a trend towards manufacturers working with each other, moving towards the electric vehicle era. As two of the biggest rivals you could possibly imagine are about to come together on a joint venture related to electric vehicles. Those are BMW and Daimler. So what they're doing, they're not building cars together or anything like that. You're not going to see a sudden BMW Merc coming out. What they're doing is they're creating a whole sort of mobility program whereby people can rent cars, drive cars, park cars and charge cars really easily, and it's a joint venture by the two companies rather than it being kind of BMW trying to achieve it or Daimler trying to achieve it. They clearly thought that together they could be much more powerful than just having the one of them doing it, so it kind of makes sense. It's set to roll out in Europe in the near future, and you should be able to sort of take a BMW 1 Series or maybe a Mercedes A-Class and drive it around the centre, and as they move towards electric vehicles will become even more important in terms of the charging stations and that kind of stuff. What it looks like is that the movement towards electric vehicles is happening so quickly that a lot of brands are worried about getting left behind, and they're seeing the strengths of other manufacturers and seeing their own weaknesses, and then seeing the weaknesses of other manufacturers and seeing their own strengths, and then deciding, actually, you know what, we could work together with them and ultimately provide a better proposition for the consumer than if we just did this alone, and hopefully be profitable for both businesses. And that's clearly what BMW and Daimler have done. So very interesting, and just something I thought would be worth a mention. Another interesting story from this month: VW have just started a new brand exclusively for the Chinese market called Jetta. It's named after the VW Jetta, and the Jetta is their kind of flagship vehicle for this brand. So in collaboration with their Chinese joint venture partner called First Automobile Works, they're looking to build this new brand to target younger buyers outside of city areas who have a lot of sort of purchasing power but not the access to mobility in the same way, and they just basically want to take that whole part of the market. They've worked out that these people make up sort of a third of the total mobility market in China, which I think is insane. It makes sense because I suppose people in cities might not use cars as much and people outside would use them to commute in. They've announced 3 models so far: the VA3, the VS5 and the VS7. The VA3 is literally a rebadged Jetta, the VS5 is a rebadged Seat Ateca, and the VS7 is a rebadged Seat Tarraco, or to an extent with the latter two. There's also the potential for the Seat Arona to arrive as the VS3, but that hasn't officially been announced yet. So what this basically looks like to me is the fact that Seat doesn't currently have any presence in China whatsoever. So rather than just introducing the Seat brand to China, they're trying to build a little bit more of a buzz around it by starting this new brand and bringing in a bunch of Seats, plus the Jetta obviously. I think it's an interesting proposition and something that other manufacturers will be able to learn from if it goes well. Also, if it goes poorly, they'll be able to work out, well, maybe that's not the right market to go for, maybe we should just stick to our normal brands. I would have assumed that the VW brand would hold more weight, but clearly they have different ideas around the point and want to make their new brand, so more power to them. As a follow-on from the MEB stuff that I mentioned last month, there's actually a whole new division that's been started at VW focusing specifically on car software. So it's a whole division made specifically for making the best software for us, the consumer, to enjoy when we're in our cars. That comes as part of the VW idea that the MEB platform, people won't be interested in what's under the hood because there's not going to be anything under the hood. It's going to be batteries and a motor in every single car. It's all going to be the same. So people will be more interested in what they get as a consumer. And now onto the big story, and it's one that I'm super excited about and something that I mentioned in the last video. I mentioned that Ginnetta are building a new supercar to kind of rival Ferraris and Lamborghinis and people within the sort of 300 to 400,000 pound price range. Well, this month has been fully announced to be on display at Geneva, which I am super excited about. I'm not going to be able to make it to Geneva this year, I don't think, but I'm excited to see the pictures of it. We already have a bunch of pictures here and there's a load of information on the car already, which I'll run you through now. It's a front mid-engine supercar with a carbon fibre chassis and tub built alongside the company's race cars. So as you know, Ginnetta actually make race cars for the Ginetta Junior Championship and for the Le Mans series and for the LMP3, LMP2 and potentially LMP1, I can't remember, but I think they do LMP cars for pretty much every category. And they were yet to make something specifically for the road until this car came along. It also has carbon fibre body panels and is shaped specifically for aerodynamics. It was built in the Williams air tunnel, which I think is incredible. Linking F1 to the road is always fun. And that area is the real deal. At 100 miles per hour it produces 376 kilograms of downforce. That's ahead of the LaFerrari and the P1, and it's within 5% of Ginetta's own LMP3 car. So they're literally making a car that has the downforce of a track race car beyond that of the hypercars that we're seeing today. I mentioned all those carbon fibre bits, and the car really is focused on being light. It only weighs in at 1,150 kilograms, which is 150 kilograms lighter than any of its rivals. And this is helped by the fact that Ginnetta has built their own super light 6-litre V8 engine that puts out 600 brake horsepower and 520 pound-feet of torque. The gearbox was also built specifically by Ginnetta to make sure it's super lightweight and super strong. And though we don't yet have a name for it, it's currently named the BB6. That 6 stands for 600 brake horsepower. The whole thing actually kind of reminds me of Star Wars with the BB8. There's a BB10 that will be potentially in the works, which means this car with 1,000 brake horsepower, which is just sick. And looking at the picture of the car that we see so far and the video, it kind of looks like the Ginnetta track car. It kind of looks like a TVR in my opinion, and that does make sense considering the owner of Ginnetta, Mr. Tomlinson, bought the brand in 2005 after he failed to buy TVR. Clearly he's a fanatic for this British style of racing track focused road cars really. They're looking to build 20 cars for 2020 and then a further 30 to 50 cars over the next following few years. So it's going to be a super exclusive car and a car that is so track focused but for the road. A real driver's car is what I understand it to be. People have clearly seen it as a very good investment already, as 14 of the 20 allocations for 2020 are already gone, so there's only 6 left, and I would really love to get one if it wasn't for the fact that I don't have anywhere near enough money to buy one, but whatever. And to kind of add on to all of that nonsense, it's actually quite a useful car too. It has 675 litres of boot space, which is pretty sick for a supercar. Open sight lines, automatic headlights, reversing camera, electronic parking brakes, sat nav, heated seats, parking sensors, ABS, traction control, climate control, full connectivity for your phone, all of this into what is literally a track car for the road. And on top of that, if you're buying the car, you can spec it however you want, in any bespoke way, with any colors, with any interior, all that kind of stuff. This basically reminds me of Koenigsegg or Pagani, and I think that's a really good proposition by Ginnetta, something that means that you can really make the car how you want it to be, whilst not losing the fact that it's an ultra lightweight, incredible car made for dominating a track and road. I'll just finish that section by saying I want one. If anyone wants to buy me one, feel free. So now we can move on to the announcements for this month, and there have been quite a few, as I mentioned, because of Geneva. Mercedes will be debuting their new facelifted GLC at Geneva, which has some subtle exterior tweaks and some new engines. The new top-of-the-range GLE 53 AMG has arrived as well. They announced the end of the SLC's production by showing the new final edition that they're going to do in its honour. And we've got the 8th generation SL Class Grand Edition as well coming from Mercedes. The Jaguar XF, F-Pace and XE are all getting upgrades. Loads of really cool tech related to those. Definitely read in the description. I've got a bunch of links to all of these different articles and stuff. The tech that they're putting into those cars looks insane. Kia are looking to bring out a high performance electric vehicle as well at Geneva, which will be really interesting. And on top of that, the new Polestar 2 has just been announced, which is the second addition to the Polestar 1. Makes sense, it's how numbers work. Basically, go and watch my previous video where I walk you through exactly everything to do with the Polestar 1, and that will explain what the Polestar 2 is going to be like. These are some cool ones. You've got two F1 themed Alfa Romeos. So you've got the Stelvio and the Giulia. They're getting these F1 themes to them as well, which I think is really, really cool. They're coming out of Geneva as well. Porsche announced that the Macan is going to be electric only, and it's coming out in 2021, which is a big step forward for them. Seat's first ever electric car is also going to be displayed at Geneva, and it's on the MEB platform that I mentioned in the last news video. The VW T-Roc R was just announced as well, which I think looks so cool. It's joining the R family alongside the Golf and the Scirocco, etc. It has almost 300 brake horsepower, and I just think it's such a good looking car. Just look at it. Peach Automotive, I've definitely ruined that word, but they're going to be at Geneva as well with an electric sports car. Mr. Peach is actually the great grandson of Ferdinand Porsche, the designer of the original Beetle and the founder of Porsche. Makes sense. The Audi RS Q4 was caught testing, and you know how much I love Audis. The Land Rover Discovery SVX has been cancelled, which is the second Land Rover to bite the dust in the last 2 months. I mentioned in my last video the Range Rover Coupe was cancelled, and now they've cancelled this, which was supposed to be a hardcore off-roading version of the Discovery. It's kind of like the SVR for the Discovery range, basically. And the final point I wanted to mention was a new 300 brake horsepower Mini John Cooper Works GP was spotted for the first time. It looks sick, even if it has its sort of camo body on to make sure that we can't see it properly. That's everything that I have for you for February. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget the topic of the week. But I mentioned I had an announcement, and what I basically wanted to say was that I am potentially starting a new series based on subscribers' cars. So if you have a particularly interesting car, maybe you've done a really good project on it, maybe you spec'd it from factory and it's got an insane spec or whatever, I'm going to be putting out a community post in the next few days that will basically run you through how you can send me a few pictures of that car or maybe a video of it, and I'll do a series whereby I show off the cars, give my opinions on them and kind of what you could do next in relation to them, and then give a sort of public poll opportunity where people can poll to decide their favourite car. The winner of that poll will get a trophy, which is actually handmade by me, so it's not really a trophy, it's in a frame. It will look cool. I haven't actually made it yet, but it's coming. But yeah, watch out for that community post. It will explain everything, how to enter, all that kind of stuff. I got a really good response on Instagram in relation to it, so I knew it was something that I really had to do. So Instagram, if you're not on that already, get on there because you would have known about this already. As always, remember to like, comment and subscribe, all that great stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Listen.